Are you and your family looking for something fun to do on a Sudbury Saturday night?
Zeke.
Okay, do it again.
Are you and your family looking for something fun to do on a Sudbury Saturday night?
Zeke one. Why are you saying "and" like that?
Because on the card you've got "and" written in bold.
That's italics, you dumb fuck.
Hello and welcome everybody back to another episode of And Now for Something a Little Bit Different. As you might have noticed, I am flying solo tonight. John has gone on vacation far away. Come round and let's talk it over. Yeah, I can't sing for shit. I apologize for that. So tonight for, let's say, episode 80, we are going to try something a little bit different. And maybe, it'll be 80 or maybe we'll change up the numbering somehow later. I don't know. But yeah, tonight I'm flying solo, and tonight I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you to Canadian TV. Yeah, they got TV. They got TV. And they got some pretty damn good shows. And they got some pretty damn funny shows. At least I think so. And hopefully, if you've seen it, you agreed. Tonight we're going to talk about a show called Shoresy. Shoresy. Yeah, that's right. It sounds weird. It is a spin-off from a little show that started back in 2016 and finished almost 12 seasons in 2023. It's a little show and actually has its origins from YouTube. It is called Letterkenny. Letterkenny spawned out of a little YouTube channel, Letterkenny Problems, I believe is the title. Please correct me if I'm wrong. One of the main characters in that show, one of the stars, his name is Jared Keeso. Maybe you've heard of him. He has been in the entertainment industry for quite a long time. In the series Letterkenny, Jared Keeso plays one of the main characters, Wayne, the toughest guy in Letterkenny. But he also had an alter ego or persona that he played on screen, whose character's name was Shoresy. Now it's Canada, folks, and hockey is a big deal up there. Shoresy is a hockey player where two of the other characters constantly seem to get into a tussle verbally, or as they call it, sniping each other with Shoresy. And Shoresy, he's just nuts. He's just bonkers in terms of what he comes up with. And he appeared throughout the season, I think through almost all the seasons of Letterkenny, and had some of the craziest lines. One of the other characters in Letterkenny, Katie, played by Michelle Millette. One of the episodes, Shoresy's calling dibs on Katie. Well, I guess you don't have to pretty much use a lot of imagination to understand why he would call dibs. And going against Jonesy and Riley, two of the characters I mentioned earlier who play hockey with him, he loves to snipe about their moms. And how, especially one time, when he was with one of their mothers, sniping, you always got to talk about somebody's mama. But he was telling a story of how his mom climaxed a little too hard and ended up breaking his aquarium and killing his Siamese fighting fish. Stuff like that just created a serious but funny character by which, as Letterkenny was wrapping up, Jared had the idea to do a spinoff that focused exclusively on Shoresy. And in the final appearance of Shoresy in Letterkenny, Wayne, they did the split camera trick, right? Wishes him good luck up in the north. Now, Shoresy was debuted in 2022 on Crave, and then it debuted a few months afterwards on Hulu. Now, again, Jared Keeso is the writer, creator, and actor for Shoresy. One of the things about Shoresy and Letterkenny, you never saw his face. So Shoresy was the chance for the audience who had a mad following for Shoresy to really get to know and see what Shoresy was all about. And another alumni coming from Letterkenny to help produce the show, being one of the executive producers. They had a lot. I'm not going to mention them all because I'm trying to keep this into a condensed episode. Jacob Tierney. Now, in Letterkenny, Jacob Tierney played he played this really off the wall, over the top character whose name was Pastor Glenn. Now, in Shoresy, he makes an appearance as Benny, who is a color commentary for hockey matches. Now, in Shoresy, it's set in Sudbury, Ontario. It's a real town. And the hockey league that Shoresy ends up in is called the North Ontario Senior Hockey Organization, the No-Show. It's supposedly AAA, but as you can guess from the name, right, it's a little play on words, I guess you could say. It has a following, but it's not like the NHL or I forget the Premier League in Canada for hockey. And he eventually plays for a hockey team called the Sudbury Bulldogs. Now, to set it up, again, Shoresy leaves the town of Letterkenny to go to Sudbury, Ontario, to join up with the Sudbury Bulldogs. Well, the show picks up and starts off with the Sudbury Bulldogs have dropped 20 games in a row. 20. So after losing 20 games in a row, Nat wants to shut the team down. It breaks Shoresy's heart. He is unwilling to accept that they're not a good team. But he makes a bet with Nat that if she gives him control, lets him take the reins, he can turn things around and, as he would say, they will never lose again. That's the premise of Shoresy. Shoresy is currently 4 seasons long. There's about six or seven episodes per season. But the focus of this particular episode, we're going to start with season 1. I don't want to just dump it all on you because it is a great series. It is a funny series. It's been attributed to being one of the few pure hockey shows or TV shows, movies that kind of spill a little bit of real light on the sport of hockey. Now, normally we go a little bit behind the scenes, behind the camera, to talk about the crew. There are just so many to really go through that I thought for this episode, I wanted to focus mainly on the characters because I think that's where the show really, truly shines, is in the characters. How they're written, how they're fleshed out, how they deliver their lines, what their roles are, and how they bring about an on-screen presence. That's the real shining polish on this show called Shoresy. Again, it's about hockey, but it's so much. Gosh, I don't even know if you want to say it's so much deeper than that. But there's a lot beneath the surface, right? There's a lot beneath the ice rink with this show. Now, the cast of Shoresy. Of course, I mentioned his name before, Jared Keeso. Now, Jared Keeso has, again, been in the industry for quite a long time. Canadian actor. He actually did some Hollywood, but he got a lot of his start in Canada. And then he went to, I think one of his bigger shows in at the time was called Monster Hunters. Kind of like a Ghostbusters, Scooby-Doo. It was a hodgepodge of stuff, but it had a good following, right? So then he tried his hand in Hollywood. He never got a leading role, but he did do some parts, small parts, in some movies you might have heard of. White Noise 2 with Nathan Fillion, if you've seen that. I Love You, Beth Cooper. Then he kind of shows up in Elysium with Matt Damon. And then he appears in Godzilla in 2014 with Matthew Broderick. He is actually the jump master of the Halo team. He then realized that, while he was in Hollywood, this success path in Hollywood, LA, it wasn't working for him, right? He's done several interviews where he's talked about it, and it just wasn't for him. So he went back to focus on what he really wanted to do. And that's where, again, Letterkenny was kind of birthed. Again, it started off as YouTube, then it grew and grew and grew to the point where, hey, they could do a show, and they did it. 12 seasons. That's a lot. Now, right before he did Letterkenny, he did do it was a remake of a French show called 1902, and some of the names you might recognize. Adrian Holmes. I think he was in the V Wars. He's come up in some other stuff. Maxim Roy. She's just beautiful. Always has been. Dan Novovich. I apologize if you're watching and I mispronounced your name. He has appeared in 1902, and he is McMurray in Letterkenny. This is kind of how he talks, right? He just barely keeps his mouth moving, and you barely understand what he's saying because he likes to go down Dominican. And then there's always another alumni from 1902 crossing over into Shoresy, Laurence Leboeuf. And you'll understand why I say it that way, because, yeah, it's funny. She plays herself. Next up, we have Tessa Tellis, who plays Nat. Nat, whose mom had passed away, brought on Shoresy thinking a lot of good things. And her mom, like Nat, very rough, very blunt, and are not afraid to tell you how it is. The dynamic is nuts between Nat and Shoresy, to the point where Shoresy like to comment that if she were just 15 years older, he might consider it. But it's just nuts. Now, she's appeared in some other things that you might have seen. She was in a movie co-starring alongside Dolph Lundgren, Michael J. White, and Tony Jaa, Skin Trade. She also appeared in several TV shows over the years, couple episodes here and there, like iZombie, Supernatural. But it wasn't until CW, yes, the CW, released a show called The 100. I'll be blunt, right? The last few seasons rolled on, but she did appear. She eventually plays a character that was seen in a couple episodes in the earlier seasons, but she comes back as a recurring character, one of the main characters, as the series closed out. And she did a really great job. And in Shoresy, she does a phenomenal job. She's hilarious. And I do have to admit, Shoresy is right. She's a sniper. Next is Harlan Blaine Kaitwehat. He is a Cree actor, Cree Indian actor. You will have heard of some of the movies that he did make an appearance in. Have you seen the movie Prey? And another movie called Die Alone. I think that was 2024, but that was with Carrie Ann Moss. And that movie is simply about, it's a zombie outbreak and a woman who just doesn't want to die alone. So the next two actresses I want to mention, Blair Lamora as Zigwan and Kylene Elizabeth Rose as Migwan. Yeah, you can guess from the names, they're sisters. They bring a dynamic which, you know how in an office setting or co-workers that you can always rely on to have your back or bust balls on your behalf? That's these sisters. All of these actors that I'm getting ready to talk about now have actually played pro hockey or semi-pro hockey. They bring a level of realism to the show in the hockey scenes that I think is very, very refreshing. If you're a hockey fan or not, go Caps. Ovechkin. They just deliver not only their lines and the characters, but they deliver on the ice. It is amazing to watch. The first one is Ryan McDonald. He plays Mark Michaels. This guy, again, he played hockey, really played hockey. He still does today. And he's appeared in several TV episodes, some movies. He is an accomplished musician, singer, and songwriter. He actually plays in a band. I believe it's called TV Heart Attack. Some of the movies that he played in, you might have heard of this one, K-19 Widowmaker, Harrison Ford, Submarine. He was uncredited in that one. He's also done, for my fellow sci-fi geeks, he was in the reboot of Battlestar Galactica as Lieutenant Edmund Gonzo Pike. He actually plays several back-to-back episodes, which was in a key pivotal moment of the storyline. Not going to give it away, If you've seen it, you'll understand it. I'm just gonna say, Kara Thrace. Going back to the CW, Smallville, Arrow. Man, I wish they didn't mess that series up. The Flash and Supernatural. Next up is Andrew Ansonen, who plays Brant Goody Goodleaf. He was a hockey player for Kanawake Condors. In this show, his main character attribute is he loves chicken. Next up is Terry Ryan, who plays Ted Hitchcock, which, and I'll go ahead and say it now, one of the running jokes as the season starts. Ted Hitchcock, if you say his name really fast, it actually sounds like Ted Hitchcock. Again, another hockey player with the Montreal Canadiens, and he's done some small TV roles here and there, nothing major. His major career was hockey. Next up, this guy it's actually pretty fascinating, his career. Jonathan Ishmael Daibi, also known as Dolo. He plays in the show Dolo. Now, he basically plays himself, and if you've recognized the name, he is an accomplished rapper who has a presence on YouTube. I believe it's Dolo Music, but he's also on Apple Music and Spotify as La Dolo. But again, he's a real hockey player who was drafted by the Nashville Predators. They actually use his real life as part of the background of his character in the show. Unfortunately, Daibi experienced some racism in some leagues where he played. I'm not going to specify them. Google is your friend if you want to look it up. But during one game, he actually climbed out of a penalty box to fight a fan who had said some very nasty slurs about his mom. It's really fascinating. You don't believe me, Google it. Now, this guy, he's really interesting because his first appearance is actually in Letterkenny. Jean-Jacques, Frankie, Jacques-Jean, JJ, Frankie, JJ. But what's really fascinating about him and, as an actor is that he is a member of the IATSE, International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. It was so funny. There's a story of, in Letterkenny, they were looking for a guy, and because of his credentials of, as a member of the IATSE, he's basically a grip, right? If you know what a grip is on the movie and TV sets, they're always behind the scenes doing things and getting things set up and getting things ready and working lights and stuff. Well, that's exactly what he was doing on Letterkenny, but they needed a foible to Shoresy and Letterkenny. And when they were developing Shoresy, Jared Keeso was trying to figure out who else do we bring in, and it was kind of like a no-brainer when it dawned on him. We've already cast this guy before. Let's bring him on to Shoresy. Oh, I apologize. His name is Max Buffard. Max Buffard, who plays JJ Frankie JJ, worked on shows and movies that you might have heard of. Chucky TV series. Yeah, he worked on that. Have you heard of a movie called Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City? Didn't they just release a sequel this year? Oh yeah, how many of you have seen the movie Nobody? That's right, Max Buffard worked on that movie as well. So, and yeah, of course, he's got a hockey background. Now, these three characters here that I'm getting ready to talk about, these actors and their characters, they're such beauts, as they would say in the show. They play three brothers, and they're all named Jim. Couldn't talk them out of it, couldn't give them a nickname. That was a funny scene when they were trying to recruit them onto the Bulldogs. Jim number one is played by Jim Muristy, whose nickname when he was playing pro and semi-pro hockey, it was McNasty. Whenever he got into fights, he was always laughing. And he sported a mohawk. So imagine a guy with a mohawk fighting you on an ice rink, and he's laughing at you. Jim number two is played by Brandon Nolan, who was drafted by the Carolina Hurricanes. And he's done some other TV work. Jim number three is played by Jordan Nolan, and he was actually drafted by the Los Angeles Kings. That's right. NHL, folks. What really makes the three Jims kind of special in this series is because it's kind of like an homage, a kind of parody. If you remember the movie, oh geez, what was it? Slapshot? Paul Newman, I think it was 1970 something. Last but definitely not least is Laurence Leboeuf. She again plays herself, who is apparently in a relationship with JJ Frankie JJ, but that kind of turns south. Aside from 1902, she's also done a couple of movies, Hollywood. One of them was Turbo Kid from 2015, and the other one was with a little unknown actress. I don't know if you've heard of her, Jennifer Lawrence. Movie Mother, but she's very prolific in the Canadian TV and movie scene. There are a lot of other actors and actresses that really have their moments within this show, and I'm going to save them because they really start coming to light in season 2, season 3, season 4. A lot of the characters, even though they might be recurring, they have major parts to play in this whole story of Shoresy. So now that we talked a little bit about the crew, well, basically we've only talked about 2 members of the crew, but the cast, which again, the fascinating part, all hockey players. Shoresy season 1 begins with the Sudbury Bulldogs losing their 20th game in a row, and Nat and Zeig and Meeg are just livid about the whole situation. To which again, Nat wants to shut the team down, but Shoresy again makes a bet with Nat that, hey, you give me control, you let me take the reins, make some player changes here, or bring some new talent on, and we will never lose again. Nat takes him up on it. The interpersonal dynamics between Shoresy and Sanguinet, I apologize. Kite Wayhat, his character's name is Sanguinet. He is actually a member of the Bulldogs who becomes the coach of the Bulldogs. This is part of Shoresy's plan. And as part of Shoresy's plan, he brings on veteran players, to which Nat, not the most enthused to learn about as they go through the roster, to which the amount of research that Shoresy put in, let me just say, he prints out a picture with their name underneath of it. He just wants to tell the story, and he is such an outstanding salesman. She accepts the reality that with only 2 games left in the current season, she doesn't have a lot to lose by bringing these veterans on. So there we start getting introduced to the other players, the core squad of the Bulldogs, which is Goodleaf, Hitchcock, Dolo, JJ Frankie JJ. So after Shoresy introduces the new team members of the Bulldogs, he goes to interview the muscle, the enforcers of the team, the 3 gyms. And again, it is a hilarious scene. All their names are Jim. It's so hilarious that the amount of twisting and brain gymnastics they go through to get them to change their names, to which now Jim, and that's all she wrote. So once they get the team kind of set up, they end up going to Nat's to have a little barbecue. And Nat is talking with Meeg, and they're of course worried about the first game that they got to play against this team. I forget the team that they're playing against, right? But they're not to be taken lightly. While they're in the kitchen discussing, the upcoming game, they're like staring with daggers coming out of their eyes at Shoresy, Goody, Hitch, Dolo, and JJ, and Sanguinet out on her back patio grilling while it's snowing. It's Canada, folks. You would think, based on the imagery and the shot, the way they put it, the guys are talking about strategy, right? What are we going to do? How are we going to go ahead and deal with this team? And what are we going to do? How are we going to play? No. Goody's talking about how unbelievable chicken is. How much about the time to put the cheese on the cheeseburgers. And it is just hilarious to see that they're not worried. They eventually talk about the upcoming game, and then they start going about, they hate playing, Dutch hockey players because their last names are so long they can't fit it all on the back of their jersey. And sure enough, they play the Dutch team and they win. They win decisively, right? So much so that Nat, Zeig, and Weeg are so, taken aback by, man, they just blew these guys out, that they figured, wow, we got to do something to get a little bit more cash infused so we can do stuff. So they go and pick up a sponsor. The sponsor is a local community collective that sells blueberries. So it's revealed that they are no longer just the Sudbury Bulldogs. They are now the Sudbury Blueberry Bulldogs. The sniping that goes on between the characters about that name. So during one of the episodes, I think it was episode 3, right, we see that the boys get into a little bit of a fight at a nightclub, to which, as they're getting ready for their second game, which, you know, they got to win. They got to win that second game to start getting into the playoffs. The guys they got to a fight with at the nightclub show up to jump them. They delay Goody, Hitch, and Dolo, and even Sanguinette from getting to the second game on time. Nat, Zig, and Wig are freaking out. Eventually, Nat has to ask him, what do we do? To which Shoresy says, if you can't win, don't play. Which is kind of odd to hear, but the basic premise is, and as they show the scene set up, Shoresy goes out on the ice, and I'm not a huge hockey fan. I just love my Washington Capitals, but I'm not sure the rules. And I think for warm-up, the other team can't take the ice until the other team leaves. So Shoresy, he just gets the rest of the team into their locker room, their hallway, while he goes out and he takes a knee on the ice. Just won't leave. Well, of course, the captain from the other team shows up and starts provoking him, and then next thing you know, a fight breaks out. But they drag the other team into their locker room area, their hallways. So the next episode picks up after they dragged him into the hallway to fight. You start hearing Patrick Hernandez's Born to Be Alive playing, and you're seeing the Bulldogs just taking it. They're bringing it's a slang term, right? They're bringing the lumber to this team. It is hilarious because one of the other dynamics that you'll see, hopefully you're going to watch it, is between a character named Mark Michaels, played by Ryan McDonald. Big Shoresy just does not like him. So one of the scenes is, even though they're fighting the other team, Shoresy takes the time out to pull Michael's hair. It's just great. While the song, again, Born to Be Alive is playing. So Nat, Zig, and me have to go before the no-show board to face possible suspension. But when they get there, yeah, there's more sniping going on between, there's like, sweet elderly ladies on this board, and they're just sniping back and forth with Nat, Zig, and we. It's pretty hilarious. Because I'm sitting there going, ooh, wow, did she really say that? Okay. But they eventually, Nat and Zig and me, actually convinced the board that it wasn't their fault. The other team came into their locker room, their hallway, and they fought there. It was a big nasty thing, but the other team was in the wrong. The board agrees, gives them the win. So now they've won 2 in a row, and they're now set to go to the finals of the no-show national tournament. It's a big deal, and they are going to be facing a team called the Sioux Cyclone. And it's another running joke in that show that the Sioux Cyclone, they're so good. They're so effing good. What the team realizes, what Sanguinette reveals to Shoresy, to which they reveal to the team, is the Sioux Cyclones were so confident that they were going to beat the Bulldogs, they called up their reserves. They let their second and third stringers play, to which the Bulldogs did not take kindly to. And they proceed to give them a very, very deserved drubbing. So, like, if you've ever played sports, or had kids, or friends of kids who've played sports, and they go to tournaments, you understand that sometimes it's not one loss and you go home. So it's the same thing with this no-show national tournament. Just because they beat them the first time, they had to face them again, a back-to-back game. Except this time, the Sioux Cyclone were so incensed that they lost, that they called up all their first stringers, right? Their stars. They take it to the Bulldogs, right? It is not looking good in the first period, second period. It dawns on Shoresy. They're not going to win this game. Because they're not going to win, they said, you know what we're going to do then? We're going to bring the lumber. They're going to let the Sioux Cyclones know that they played the Bulldogs. as the period starts up, the third period starts up, immediate fights. Shoresy, Dolo, Goody, Hitch just start pummeling guys, right? And they all get sent to the penalty box. But it was a beautiful thing because as they showed that they were going to bring the lumber and sacrifice for the team rallies. And going into the third period, they were down 0-5. They come back and they score 2 goals, right? Part of the dialogue between Shoresy and his team, especially the 3 Jims, were they wanted Jims to go in and play and score goals. They basically, closed the game 2-5. They lost. After losing, they're still elated, the Bulldogs, right? And they're riding high and they are, calling and talking to their parents, thinking that they're done. We transition over to see Nat and Shoresy. Nat and Shoresy end up having a heart-to-heart, right? She said, you made a promise, you made a bet. Tell me why I should not shut this team down. To which Shoresy explains to her, hey, listen, yeah, we might have lost, but you keep this team together, I'll guarantee you one thing. That team, we face them again, they will never be the same. Because we brought the lumber and they didn't want any part of that. They knew who to avoid because they're going to get an ass whooping. Nat is still doubtful. So she point blank asks Shoresy, if I keep this team together, what are you going to do differently? To which the episode and the season closes out kind of Rocky style with Shoresy running with his teammates super early in the morning throughout town when it's freezing cold, where even some members of the community come out and join them, and they're all jogging, getting in shape, getting prepped. So that's basically Shoresy first season in a nutshell. Now, it sounds plain, it sounds like any other old hockey drama, but trust me, folks, the comedy, the writing that Jared brings and the way these characters deliver, it was unlike anything I've ever seen before in a comedy show. I mean, downright raw how funny some of this stuff can go. The introduction of this episode, right? That was just one small scene between Zig and Shoresy. Shoresy is a character. He is one of those folks, as they try to explain his characters, like, Shoresy, he'll ask you a question, and as soon as you start answering, he'll say, huh? For example, are you guys enjoying this episode? Why, yes, huh? He could be the only person standing in front of Nat, and she's yelling at him and asking him a question, and he'll go, who, me? Like, there's nobody else there. It's crazy. The dynamic between Shoresy and Sanguinette. I mean, there is love there, but it's always Sanguinette, shut the F up. Goody, is unbelievable. Name a food, it's unbelievable. Hitchcock, the one part of his background is that he's from Newfoundland, right? And they call him, well, he's a Newfie. Never heard of that before. And they, Shoresy says, well, you don't want to say that in front of him. To which Nat says, yes, boys. I guess that's the thing. Again, Dolo being a rapper, it's they're like, so he's a rapper artist? Jesus Christ, no, he's a rapper. Frankie JJ, he's the ladies' man. He loves the ladies. The Jims, they're just, again, the running joke is, Jims are so beautiful. They're so fucking beautiful. It's just amazing. The other part that really makes this show is, I don't know how they do it, but the music selection that they introduce with certain scenes, just phenomenal, right? I mean, again, I Hernandez, Born to Be Alive. They, for folks who know, they introduced some Chemical Brothers during one of the hockey matches, which is just incredibly hype, right? It's just an outstanding production, and it is funny. I think it's won several awards already. I kind of want to introduce it to you because, again, I want to talk about season 2, season 3, and maybe expand a little bit more beyond this little bit of a compressed episode. And hopefully, I can get, John, when he comes back, to, start watching some of it. And so we can have some, real discussions a little bit back and forth. But in the meantime, I also want to invite you to check out Shoresy. Again, it's free on Hulu. There is a 5th season coming I can't remember. I don't think it's been announced yet exactly when, but season 5 is coming. You're just gonna have to see the first season to really get set and decide if Shoresy is for you or is not for you. If you're listening and you enjoy the content that we've put out so far, then I think you will be one of those that can listen to it and go, my gosh, that's rough, but man, that was funny. My son, who introduced me to the world of Letterkenny, absolute fan. My daughter, not so much, but hey, she loves horror movies, so she's still cool. It is one of those rare creations that when you think of like Canadian TV, right, you kind of have your stereotypes or your dislikes of certain regional programming, whatever they do. But Jared Keeso took his lessons from LA, his successes from Canada, his friends that he's worked with over the years on Letterkenny. They worked together again on Shoresy. I think they really put together something immensely funny. And, several sites, several other folks who have watched and reviewed Shoresy have also said that, for a hockey show, it's amazingly very true to hockey, but it's also one of the funniest shows, again, to come out of Canada. Jared Keeso as Shoresy. Folks, check it out. Thank you so much for stopping by. A couple shout outs to some podcasts that you should be checking out, listening to, or watching. We have, our buddies Troy and Brad from Not a Bomb Podcast. We have Jose and Mike over at Watch Skip Plus. We have Death by DVD. Check it out. He's on a bit of a hiatus. We got Sammy over at the Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema. And to round it all out, we also have Caliber 9 from Outer Space. Lots of love between all the communities, all the different shows, the podcasts. Check them all out. Hopefully you've had some fun talking about this. Going to leave you some bonus images and little teasers from the Shoresy show. Hopefully you'll check it out. Again, free on Hulu. Until that time, y'all stay safe. Be kind, be respectful to one another, and we'll see you soon.